Good afternoon, class. Today we will be studying lesson 6.3, which is multiplication and division of rational numbers. And as we've studied in the previous chapter, when you add or subtract rational numbers, you always have to find a common denominator before you can add or subtract. What makes multiplication of integers different is you don't have to find a common denominator. You just multiply straight across. Meaning you take the numerators and you multiply them across, then you take the denominators, you multiply them straight across, and then you simplify your answer, and that's your final answer. Let's do a couple of examples to get some practice in. In our first example, you have 1/2 times 2/3. If you take the numerators and multiply them straight across, you get 1 times 2, then in the denominators you get 2 times 3, and that gives you 2 over 6. And you know that can be simplified because 2 goes into 2 once, and it goes into 6 3 times. So your final answer is 1/3. When you have bigger numbers, like our next example, 6 over 24 times 8 over 48, you can either multiply straight across, or you can simplify it before you multiply straight across. For example, 6 goes into 6 once, and it goes into 48 8 times. 8 will go into 8 once, and go into 24 3 times. And so when you multiply that straight across, you get 1 times 1 over 3 times 8. And that gives you 1 over 24. And that can't be simplified, so that's your final answer. And this is called cross multiplying. This helps you simplify the answer before the end, especially because when you have larger numbers, it sometimes takes longer to simplify it. And this helps especially if you have a whole page of multiplying like this. You also can divide rational numbers. And just like multiplying, you don't have to find a common denominator. But what you have to do is you multiply, you take the second fraction, and you take the reciprocal of it. So you have 2/3 divided by 5/6. And what you do is you do 2/3, and you multiply by the reciprocal, which is 6 over 5. And you get 2 times 6 over 3 times 5, which equals 12 over 15, which equals 4 over 5, because 3 will go into both of these, the numerator and the denominator. And just like we done in the previous one, you can also cross multiply to simplify it before you multiply. And you do 2/3 times 6/5, and we know that 3 will go into 3 once and go into 6 twice, so that gives you 4/5, and that helped you simplify it before you got to your final answer. This also helps when you're dividing larger fractions. For instance, you can take 9/12 divided by times 24 over 3, and you can multiply that out and get a large number, and then simplify at the end. Or you can cross multiply, and 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 9 3 times, 12 goes into 12 once, and it goes into 24 twice. And you get 6 over 1, which is 6 for your final answer. And that helps when you're multiplying larger numbers or dividing larger numbers. You also, when you multiply, another way to show multiplication, as we know, is by repeated addition. If you take a small number like 2 times 4, you know that in addition it's 4 plus 4, so you have 2 4s. In this example, you can also do that with rational numbers. And you have 4 times 2/3, which means you have 2/3 4 times. 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3 plus 2/3. And when you add them together, you get 2, 4, 6, 8 in your numerator, and 3 in your denominator. You can also show that same fraction by just regular multiplication. And what you do is you take the 4 and you put it over 1 to make it a fraction, and you times 2/3, and you get in your numerator 4 times 2, and you in the denominator 1 times 3, and that equals 8 over 3. The same thing you got before by the repeated addition. You can also show multiplication with different diagrams. And this helps people that like to see pictures, and sometimes pictures help students and people learn better. So here's an example of a diagram. It says, show 1/2 times 4/5 using 2 diagrams. In the first diagram, you know that 1/2 times 4/5 is 1/2 of 4/5, and because the times symbol means of, and so we want to show the 4/5. So what you do is you draw a rectangle, divide it in 5 equal parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you shade in 4 of the equal parts. And then this shows 4/5. The second one is you darken 1/2 of the 4/5. And if you multiply 1/2 times 4/5, you get in your numerator 4, and in your denominator 10, which then equals, because 2 goes into both of them, you get 2/5. So you draw a rectangle, divide it in 5 parts, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then divide it down the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but you get 10, then you shade in 4 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, you shade in 4, so that means then you have, so that's 4/10, or 1/2 of 4/5, and that's another example to show multiplication of rational numbers. And the last example is you can also show diagrams of division of rational numbers. For example, you might get a problem that says 2/3 divided by 1/9, and your question may ask you, how many 1/9 make up 2/3? Okay, so if you multiply it or divide it, you get 2/3 multiplied by the reciprocal, 9 over 1, and if you cross multiply, you know that 3 goes into 3 once, it goes into 9 3 times, and so you get 2 times 3 over 1 times 1, and which gives you 6 over 1. So 6 1/9 make up 2/3. So what you do is you draw a circle and you divide it into 9 equal parts. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, you divide it in 9 equal parts, and you shade 6 of them equal parts to show 6 1/9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And there it shows that 6 1/9 make up 2/3. And so that concludes our lesson today, class. You can look over these whiteboard examples for help. You can contact me if you need more help. Next week we will go on to lesson 6.4. And so just do some of these kind of problems for homework. And next time we meet, we'll go over the answers.